You lived through an entire chapter of your life that is now completely inaccessible to you. You opened your eyes for the first time. You heard a human voice for the first time. You tasted food, learned to crawl, took your first steps, and spoke your first words. These were some of the most important moments of your life. And yet you remember none of them. Not your first laugh, your first word, or your first birthday. It is as if the earliest years of your existence were erased. But why can't you remember the very beginning of your own life? Most people think the answer is simple. You were just too young. Your brain was not developed enough. But that explanation is incomplete. The truth is much stranger. Your baby brain was not incapable of forming memories. In fact, it was doing exactly that. So if those memories once existed, what happened to them? Where did they go? And why does every human being on Earth seem to lose the first years of their life in exactly the same way? This phenomenon has a name, infantile amnesia. But naming it does not explain it. To understand what really happened to your earliest memories, we need to look inside the developing brain itself. At first glance, it seems obvious that babies simply cannot remember things. But science tells a very different story. In the 1980s, psychologist Carolyn Rovi Collier conducted a famous experiment. She placed babies in cribs and tied a ribbon from one of their ankles to a toy hanging above them. At first, the babies kicked randomly, but eventually they noticed something. Every time they kicked their leg, the toy moved. Very quickly, they learned the connection. Kick the leg, move the toy. Once they understood this, they repeated the action again and again. This was no longer random movement. This was learning. More importantly, it was memory formation. But the real test came later. When researchers brought the same babies back after a delay and placed them in the same setup, something surprising happened. The babies immediately started kicking again. No instructions, no trial and error. They remembered. Even babies as young as 2 months old could retain these memories for several days. Older infants could remember for weeks. So babies clearly can form memories. They can learn, store information, and recall it later, which creates a deeper mystery. If those memories were real, why do they not survive? Why does every trace eventually disappear? Part of the answer lies in a small structure deep inside your brain called the hippocampus. This is one of the primary systems involved in forming episodic memories, the memories you can mentally replay as experiences from your own life. A conversation, a birthday, a walk outside. In adults, the hippocampus works alongside other brain regions to organize and stabilize these experiences. But in infants, this system is still under construction. The neural connections required for long-term memory storage are not yet fully mature. This means babies can form short-term memories, but preserving them for years is far more difficult. But this still does not explain everything. If you enjoy videos like this, make sure to subscribe. Because what comes next is where this mystery becomes even stranger. There is another process happening in the infant brain that may be even more important. During the first years of life, your brain is growing at an extraordinary rate. It is constantly producing massive numbers of new neurons. This process is called neurogenesis. While neurogenesis is essential for brain development, it may come with an unexpected side effect, memory disruption. As new neurons are added into existing brain circuits, those circuits are reorganized. Connections are strengthened, weakened, and sometimes overwritten entirely, and those same connections are where memories are stored. In other words, the very process building your brain may also be destabilizing your earliest memories. Researchers tested this idea in animal studies. When scientists artificially increased neurogenesis in adult mice, the mice began forgetting previously learned information more quickly. And when neurogenesis was reduced in infant mice, their memories lasted longer. The results suggested something remarkable. Your earliest memories may not have disappeared because your brain was weak, but because it was growing too fast to preserve them. Your brain was constantly renovating itself, and in the process, older memory traces were lost. But memory is not just a biological process. To form lasting autobiographical memories, you need something else, a stable sense of self. You need to understand that experiences are happening to you. And early in life, that understanding does not fully exist. For many months, infants do not recognize themselves as separate individuals. One classic test demonstrates this. Researchers place a small mark on a baby's face and then position the baby in front of a mirror. Very young infants typically react as though they are seeing another child. But around 18 months, something changes. The child reaches for the mark on their own face. For the first time, they recognize, that is me. And this developmental milestone closely overlaps with the age at which autobiographical memories begin to emerge. Before that point, experiences are happening, but there is no fully developed narrative self organizing them into personal history. And then, there is language. Before you could speak, your experiences existed mostly as raw sensation. Light, sound, emotion, touch. But without language, those experiences lacked structure. Words do more than describe memories, they help organize them. Language turns isolated moments into stories, and stories are easier to preserve. As children begin speaking and discussing past experiences, memory becomes far more stable. So when you combine all of this together, the picture becomes clearer. Your memory system was still developing. Your brain was rapidly rewiring itself. Your sense of self had not fully formed. And language had not yet provided structure to your experiences. It was not one single reason that erased your earliest years. It was all of them, which means the first years of your life were not empty. They were full of experiences you once had but could not keep. And perhaps that is the strangest part of all. You did not forget your earliest self because it was unimportant. You forgot it because your brain had a more urgent task. It was building the person you would eventually become. And in order to become who you are today, your brain had to let the beginning go.